Let's say you want to get married. And I'm sure for a lot of you, maybe you did this, maybe you had this conversation with your partner. You said, we don't want to get married in a church because we're not religious. We want to get married, and maybe we can have one of our friends officiate the wedding because that friend knows both of us. Or we can hire like a humanist celebrant or a secular celebrant to do the wedding because they actually have training to do that sort of thing. And they know whatever you need to do paperwork wise to get the marriage certificate and all that stuff. Well, let me show you the law in Texas. This is what the law says in Texas about who is authorized to conduct wedding ceremonies. Okay. This is very specific here. The following persons are authorized to conduct a marriage ceremony. 1. A licensed or ordained Christian minister or priest. 2. A Jewish rabbi. 3. A person who is an officer of a religious organization and who is authorized by the organization to conduct a marriage ceremony. And 4, a current, former, or retired federal judge or state judge. So your options are a religious leader, or anyone who's just declared a Christian priest, which those are like a dime a dozen at this point, but a religious leader or a secular judge. Those are your options. Well, what if you're just a random dude who wants to marry your friends and do the ceremony for them? You're not allowed to. But this is where it gets interesting. Because I'm sure some of you have seen this. If you are in a state that has these sorts of rules, there are websites that say, oh, you need to be an ordained religious leader to perform a wedding ceremony. Well, why don't you come to, for example, the Universal Life Church? And for like a fee of $25 or something, we will just give you a certificate that says you're an ordained minister. And the Universal Life Church, their beliefs are so vague that literally anyone could be a member. And that's kind of the point. They only exist so random people can perform wedding ceremonies for your friends in states where they say only religious leaders are allowed to do that sort of thing. So if you want your friend to perform the ceremony, make them an ordained priest, and all you have to do is pay shipping and handling or pay for the certificate, and problem solved. But what happens if you actually are a secular celebrant, somebody who went through training to learn how to officiate weddings in a way that doesn't have religion baked into it? Because a group called the Center for Inquiry actually performs those types of training sessions. The American Humanist Association does a version of that as well. But if you are a secular organization and you ordain an officiant, a celebrant in Texas, that doesn't count because you're not a religious leader. And so now CFI, Center for Inquiry, they are suing the state of Texas, or suing specifically a group in Texas, in order to get this overturned. And CFI actually has history of doing this. They pushed to make this change in the state of Oregon, and the law was changed to allow secular celebrants to perform marriages. In Illinois, they sued to make that happen. They won the lawsuit. Indiana, they also won that with a lawsuit. Michigan also, I think, passed a law that allows secular celebrants to officiate weddings. Texas hasn't budged because it's Texas, right? So there's just no good reason to deny secular celebrants the same opportunity, especially when you think like the dude who paid $25 to get a certificate online is allowed to do it, but someone who has years of experience and training in doing it is not. That doesn't make any sense. So this lawsuit is filed. Here's the press release from CFI. CFI files suit in Texas seeking legal recognition for secular celebrants. And basically, this lawsuit is filed on behalf of a guy named Eric McCutcheon. He is a Tarrant County resident who has been a secular celebrant for a decade now. And the lawsuit says he wishes to conduct marriage get the licenses for people seeking a non-religious marriage ceremony in Texas, but because of the state's laws, he cannot legally perform this service. And actually, let me show you one other thing in the Texas law that I hadn't mentioned. If you go down after you go through the list of who's allowed to perform the ceremonies, look at part C here. Except, as we just said above, a person commits an offense if the person knowingly conducts a marriage ceremony without authorization under this section. An offense under this subsection is a Class A misdemeanor. So if you and your partner get married and you have your friend conduct the wedding ceremony and they're not allowed to, like, it could lead to criminal charges. And that's insane. So that's why this guy is filing this lawsuit. He specifically, I'll show you the lawsuit here. He specifically goes after a couple of people. Here is this lawsuit. You could see CFI and Eric McCutcheon are filing the lawsuit in Fort Worth against Mary Louise Nicholson, who is the clerk of Tarrant County, Texas, and the person who is like you get the stamp of approval that your marriage license is valid. And Phil Sorrells in his capacity as district attorney of Tarrant County, Texas, because he's the guy that would file those criminal charges against you if you performed a wedding ceremony and you were not authorized to do so. So that's who they're going after. CFI actually says in this thing, this is one of the parts of their lawsuit I want to share because it's a long thing. I'm not going to read the whole lawsuit. A ceremony solemnized by secular elected officials is often not an acceptable alternative for any number of reasons, including limitations on the time and place ceremonies may occur. This is saying why judges shouldn't be doing it. The risk of the inclusion of religious concepts and language in the ceremony, contrary to the couple's desires, the aversion to the governmental overtone that the elected official's presence carries, and the anonymity of the official who typically will not know the couple personally and therefore unable to construct a service which expresses the couple's values and personalities. So they're saying, don't make atheists go to a local judge to perform their marriage ceremony because that's the only option, because that guy doesn't know them. They might accidentally bring in, you're married under the eyes of God or whatever. You don't want that. If you're a secular couple and you want to get married, you might want someone who knows you well and can recite the poetry you want them to do and write vows that are original, whatever it is that you want to do. But that person's not allowed to do it, even if they have authorization from a group like CFI. And that's crazy. CFI is demanding, obviously, that the law be modified. Here's what their lawyer said. Here we go. Human rights are universal and should not be predicated on one's religious belief or non-belief. Requiring religious affiliation in order to celebrate a marriage in Texas and imposing criminal penalties on those who would choose otherwise turns non-believers into second-class citizens. We believe this statutory requirement is unconstitutional and must be changed. Couldn't agree more. I think that's the right way to go about doing this. What I did find interesting is that this is actually not the first time CFI has done this sort of lawsuit in Texas. And it's not the first time they had this plaintiff, Eric McCutcheon, be the guy who filed the lawsuit. In fact, in 2018, I will show you this. Look at this press release. In 2018, they filed a lawsuit from that guy in Dallas County, not Tarrant County, but Dallas County, for the exact same reasons. And then a judge dismissed it. And this is what CFI said after that lawsuit was dismissed. Headline, Texas court rejects secular wedding celebrants. Center for Inquiry vows to appeal. They did not appeal. But look what it says here. On August 16th, the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas rejected a challenge to the privileged status granted religious organizations and individuals under Texas marriage law. I'm not going to get into all the reasons the judge said no, but in short, the reason the federal judge dismissed the case, and this is a George W. Bush appointed judge, basically they said the Texas law as written is legal. And CFI cannot argue that it's a religious law or it promotes religion or endorses religion. It is a secular on the surface law. If atheists want to get married, they can get married. A judge can do it for them. Like, there's no law that says you have to be allowed to have a certain kind of officiant because this law doesn't exclude anybody. That's basically what it boiled down to, right? It's a frustrating thing. So what I don't know and what I could not get in. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me show you one thing that judge said years ago because I found this interesting. Look at this at the very bottom. The fact that the statute, the Texas law, does not allow every secular individual trained to solemnize marriages, to legally solemnize marriages in Texas, does not make this statute unconstitutional. Instead, there is a rational basis for the limitations based on both the historical practice of allowing judges and religious officials to solemnize marriages and because these individuals and their organizations can reasonably be expected to ensure the prerequisites to marriage are met and that yada 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 whatever. They just don't care. I asked CFI this. I have not gotten an answer. I didn't realize they could just file the exact same lawsuit with the same plaintiff in a neighboring county. Like, it's in the same like district. I don't know why they're allowed to do that. I'm not sure what the legal justification for that is. They're filing it in the Fort Worth division of the Northern District of Texas, whereas last time they did it in the Dallas division of the Northern District of Texas. But I don't know. I don't think I've seen a lot of that happening, and I don't know why it would be any more successful this time around if the same court said no to them last time. Anyway, even in Texas, though, I mean, this should be a clear ruling in favor of the plaintiffs. Like, the benefit would be obvious. The harm is non-existent if you change the law here. And I think the legal precedent is fully on the side of the secular celebrants. So we'll see what happens with this. I hope it's not tossed out. I hope it's not dismissed like it was years ago, but who knows? And I just want to add as a little disclaimer here, everything I just said, I do find this lawsuit worthwhile. I hope Center for Inquiry wins this legal case. That said, I think it bears mentioning that I don't like CFI as an organization. I think they give too much deference to Richard Dawkins, who they are legal partners with. Richard Dawkins is very much anti-trans. They promote Richard Dawkins. They platform Richard Dawkins. They endorse what he says about trans people. They've made comments that I found dismissive of racial injustice that I found disgusting. And just this past weekend, they held their annual conference in Las Vegas, and they platformed another scientist named Jerry Coyne, who also dismisses trans people and trans rights and things like that. So I don't know what else to say other than, like, I don't care much for the organization. It's led entirely by men at this point on their board of directors, which is interesting to note. There are no women on their board of directors. But also, I do hope they win this lawsuit. All right, I'll leave it at that. What do we got here? And then I'll wrap it up. I'm done. I wonder if these rules would allow an official of the Satanic Temple to do a ceremony. I think because the Satanic Temple is a religious organization under the law, if they ordain someone to do a wedding, I don't think Texas is stopping them. I have not heard a story about Texas stopping that from happening. Like, you can be an obscure, smaller, fringe, anti-religious group, but if you're just not religious, you can't do the same thing. That's what this lawsuit's about. But I don't think this is one of those, like, wow, I hope the Satanic Temple gets involved. I don't think that's the issue here. So in Texas, you can't have a naval captain of the ship officiate the marriage. That's an old school sailor tradition. I would know. I was a sailor. Wow. That's an interesting point. I do not know what the situation is there. I don't know how that would work. I did not look into that one, but now I'm very curious. I would like to get the answer to that, but if you find out, please let me know. When the Supreme Court starts contradicting their own rulings, we know we have lost that branch of the government to corruption. No kidding. It's one thing to overturn precedents because it's bad law. It did not work. We need to do better. It's another when no one knows what the hell's going on anymore because the conservatives have hijacked the court and they're just undoing things on the basis of we feel like it, which is what's happening right now. So again, even if you hate Kamala Harris and her positions, vote for Democrats so that the Supreme Court is in safer hands in the future. Because I promise you, if Donald Trump wins and they get a Republican Senate, within like a month, Alito's going to retire, Clarence Thomas is going to retire, and they will be replaced by like fetuses whose parents are Republicans so that they have those seats for life. All ridiculous. Marriage under the eyes of God. Register your love with the state. What are we doing here? It's called tradition. Get used to it. I mean, listen, I know plenty of secular people who don't like to do all the religious marriage stuff, but they also want to celebrate in front of their friends and they want to be married on paper for benefits, if nothing else, because there's a lot of legal benefits that come from being married, which means you got to have your marriage license, which means you have to have someone sign off on it. And in Texas, either that's a religious leader or it's a judge. But it can't be a secular leader who is specialized in doing those ceremonies, apparently. I mean, the judge is being fucking obtuse on purpose. The plaintiff did not sue because atheists couldn't get married. They sued because atheists cannot be ordained. Yeah, I mean, yes, that is what the lawsuit was about 5 years ago. It's almost an identical lawsuit. And the judge said, if you're saying this thing discriminates against non-religious people, the judge said, no, it doesn't. And then just tossed it out. I did ask CFI, how come you did not appeal this case? I mean, they could have legitimately said, because it's Texas and because it's this Supreme Court. We have no path to victory here. So that might have been the answer, but I have not heard back from them and I don't know why they haven't answered me yet. Maybe it's because I say things like, I don't love CFI. All right, I believe that captain of a ship thing is while at sea. Could be wrong. I don't know the answer, like I said, but I wonder if that marriage license then has legal standing if the couple is in Texas after that. I don't know.